pull up a stool. You're going to need a stiff drink for this one.
I've got one ready for them. What are we getting into tonight?
We are looking at an ancient Chinese battlefield. Specifically, the moment where a teenager on a white horse completely dismantled an invincible 1,000-strong military python just by, methodically targeting its kneecaps.
Sounds messy.
Oh, it is. Welcome to tonight's deep dive. We're unpacking the tactical logic behind one of the most chaotic military epics in history, drawn from the Sui Tang Yanyi.
Right, the romance of the Sui and Tang dynasties. I'll just keep drying these glasses while you set the board.
Perfect. So my mission tonight is to explain these ancient Chinese military tactics using terms an American beginner can easily grasp. So think of this as a mix of NFL defensive playbooks, MMA cross-training, and absolute WWE-level physics violations.
I like that framing. But it is worth noting that beneath the mythological veneer of these historical texts, there's a really profound, ruthless logic to how these military systems function.
Yeah, and ultimately how they failed, right?
Exactly.
That is the goal tonight, to figure out the physical reality of how a massive empire just collapsed. So we start with a rebel group called Wagang.
Wagang. Okay.
They're essentially a startup rebellion, scrappy, highly aggressive, and they've just publicly declared independence.
Which is a bold move against an established power.
Very bold, because the reigning corporate monopoly in this scenario is the Sui Dynasty Empire, and they do not tolerate startups.
Monopolies rarely do.
Right. So the Sui Empire sends their massive, heavily disciplined professional army to just crush Wagang. And to do this, they deploy their ultimate playbook, a battlefield formation called the Long Snake Array.
Just the name itself is psychological warfare.
How so?
Well, it projects a specific kind of structural threat. It tells the enemy that they aren't facing just a static wall of men, but a living, responsive mechanism.
Yeah, and I want to break down what that mechanism actually looks like on the ground. Picture like an American football defense.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But instead of a defensive line just trying to hold their ground or, sack a quarterback, this defense physically bites back.
It bites back.
Literally. If the Wagang rebels attack the head of the formation, the vanguard, the pale of the army sweeps around the flanks and crushes them from behind.
A classic pincer movement, but automated.
Exactly. And if the rebels realize this and try to attack the tail, the head loops back and strikes them. It is a massive, heavily armored python made of thousands of soldiers.
So everywhere they strike, the trap just closes around them.
Right. The rebels are getting completely slaughtered because every time they hit it, the snake just wraps around them.
It is a closed-loop, self-reinforcing system. The Sui army designed this to overwhelm the enemy psychologically well before they even make a physical dent.
Because it just looks invincible.
Everywhere the rebels look, they see a cohesive, moving wall of death. The geometry basically ensures that the enemy's own offensive momentum triggers their encirclement.
Hold on a second, though. I have to push back on the idea of an army moving perfectly like water. We are talking about tens of thousands of guys wearing heavy armor, running through mud, with limited visibility. The tail of a multi-mile formation does not magically know that the head is being attacked in real time.
No, of course not.
So how does this giant snake actually coordinate without just tripping over itself?
That is the critical question. To make a formation like the Long Snake Array work, it requires a highly complex centralized nervous system.
Okay, so what does that look like in ancient warfare?
It means a massive synchronized network of signal flags and war drums. The command center sits at the pivot points, the joints of the snake.
Ah, so there are guys in the middle just directing traffic.
Precisely. When the head engages, drummers beat a specific rhythm, and flag bearers raise specific colors. The officers at the tail see the flags, hear the drums, and know exactly when and where to wheel their troops around.
Wow.
The snake only moves because of this constant, uninterrupted transmission of sensory data.
Which means the invincibility is a complete illusion.
It relies entirely on a fragile communication network, yes.
And that brings us to the guy who figured it out. Just as the Wagang Rebellion is getting ground into dust, a young kid named Luo Cheng rides onto the battlefield.
The Prince of Beiping.
Yeah, he rides in on a pristine white horse carrying a silver spear. He looks at this giant, terrifying meat grinder of a snake formation, and he just smirks.
He's not intimidated.
He is completely unimpressed.
He is unimpressed because he is looking at the system through a completely different lens.
Right.
The Wagang rebels were looking at the armor and the sheer mass of the troops, But Luo Chang is looking at the joints. He is looking for the drummers and the flags.
And the reason he knows how to break those joints is because he is cross-trained.
That's a crucial detail.
Yeah, back in this era, military families guarded their martial arts techniques like corporate trade secrets. But Luo Chang managed to learn the secret dual mace techniques of the Qin family.
Maces, right. Heavy blunt weapons.
Yep. And he combined them with his own family's technique, the Five Tiger soul-breaking spear. This is where the MMA analogy really applies.
He's mixing disciplines.
Exactly. He is a modern mixed martial artist stepping into a rigid, traditional boxing match.
Because cross-training expands your tactical vocabulary. If you only train as a spearman, you adopt the blind spots of a spearman.
And a spear is mostly for stabbing, right?
Right. A spear is precise and piercing, but it struggles against heavy, interlocking shield walls. By integrating the heavy, blunt force logic of the dual maces into his repertoire, Luo Chang eliminated his own tactical blind spots.
I want to get into the physical mechanics of that because it explains how he actually dismantled the array.
How did he do it?
Well, while the rest of the rebel army is getting distracted by the Sui army swinging these massive fists, the head and the tail of the snake, Luo Chang, just ignores them.
He bypasses the main threat entirely.
Yeah, he rides like a silver lightning bolt straight into the pivot points, the communication hubs.
The joints of the snake.
Right. And when he hits the heavy infantry holding the giant wooden shields at those joints, he doesn't use his spear. He uses the maces.
Oh, that makes sense.
He physically shatters the shields and the arms holding them.
The blunt force trauma of the mace creates a massive breach in the defensive shell.
Exactly. And the second that shield wall drops, he switches back to the precise, piercing logic of the spear.
A very efficient combination.
He threads the needle right through the gap and takes out the commanding officer, the flag bearer, or the drummer. He doesn't try to chop off the snake's head. He methodically severs the spinal cord.
And once those communication nodes are destroyed, the signal from the head simply cannot reach the tail.
It's just dead air.
Exactly. The officers in the rear hear no drums and see no flags. The geometry completely collapses. It ceases to be a reactive, living snake and instantly degrades into tens of thousands of confused, isolated soldiers just standing in the mud.
The complex system fails the moment its internal signaling is disrupted.
It always does.
So the Wagan rebels see the flags drop, they surge forward, and the supposedly invincible Python is just sliced into ribbons. It is a total operational collapse for the Sui Empire.
A devastating loss.
Huge. Now, if you are Emperor Yang Wang and you just watched your state-of-the-art military formation get dismantled by a teenager targeting your communication hubs, a normal leader enters crisis management.
You would certainly think so.
You fortify the capital. You restructure your command.
You would expect a rapid consolidation of resources, maybe diplomatic outreach to fragment the rebellion, or at least a tactical retreat to defensible terrain.
Yeah, that is what a rational human being would do. Emperor Yang Wang is not burdened by rationality.
No, he is not.
Instead of managing the crisis, he decides that right now, with his empire actively burning to the ground, is the perfect time to build a massive fleet of luxury dragon boats and take a leisurely cruise down the river to Yangzhou.
It is almost hard to believe.
His stated reason is that he wants to look at some rare Qianqua flowers.
It is the absolute pinnacle of administrative detachment.
It is a luxury death trip. I want to frame this for you so the sheer absurdity really lands.
Please do.
It is exactly like a Fortune 500 CEO watching the FBI raid his headquarters while his company files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and deciding to spend the last of the corporate treasury on a multi-million-dollar yacht party just to watch a nice sunset.
That's a perfect analogy.
He drafts thousands of laborers to pull these massive boats. He loads them up with concubines, musicians, and luxury goods, and he just slowly, majestically floats down the river into hostile territory.
You know, this kind of behavior actually has a deep psychological precedent in collapsing hierarchies.
Wait, really? People actually do this?
Oh, absolutely. Why do leaders engage in grandiose displays of luxury when the end is near? It is a defense mechanism.
Huh?
The emperor is attempting to project absolute authority and unbothered superiority. He genuinely believes that if he acts as though the rebels are entirely beneath his notice, the reality of the rebellion will simply fade away.
Wow. I don't buy that he actually thought the rebels would disappear, though. I think he was just so insulated by his own status that he forgot the whole concept of consequences.
That's also very possible. Insulation breeds delusion.
And the consequence of this boat trip was immediate. Because he made himself a giant, incredibly wealthy, slow-moving target, He achieved the one thing the rebels had completely failed to do themselves.
He united them.
He united them. Prior to this luxury cruise, you had 18 rebel kings and 64 different rebel factions. Historically, they were referred to as the smoke and dust.
Right. Highly fragmented.
They hated each other. They were fighting over territory, resources, influence. But the second they get word that the emperor is floating down the river to look at flowers, they call a total truce.
They realize the ultimate prize is just drifting toward them.
Exactly. They organize an unprecedented unified blockade at a massive geographical choke point called Simming Mountain.
Hubris is the ultimate unifier of your enemies.
It really is.
The emperor effectively did their strategic planning for them. A fragmented, chaotic rebellion is incredibly difficult to organize because there is no central objective.
Right, it's like herding cats.
By presenting himself in such a vulnerable, stationary manner, he temporarily erased all their internal political divisions. He handed them a single focal point.
He basically gift-wrapped his own assassination.
He did!
So the luxury dragon boat trip hits a dead end at Simming Mountain. The emperor is trapped. He looks out from his yacht and sees a million angry rebels and 18 kings staring down at him from the cliffs.
The illusion of control is gone.
Systems theory has completely failed. His military strategy is gone. The only solitary reason this emperor is still breathing is because of his bodyguards standing on the deck.
Ah, Yuan Chengdu.
The empire's god of war.
At this point, the conflict shifts entirely. We go from grand strategy and systemic complexity to the raw mechanics of individual combat.
Yeah, when institutional structures fail, survival just comes down to physical force.
Exactly.
And the physical force at play here literally defies the laws of physics. Let me set the tail of the tape for this matchup.
Go for it.
In the defender's corner, holding the line for the doomed emperor, is Yuan Chengdu. He is described as being 12 feet tall.
A literal giant.
He wields a weapon called the Phoenix Wing Gilded Tang. It is essentially a massive bladed trident that weighs 400 pounds.
Incredible.
He is standing at the blockade, single-handedly holding off hundreds of rebel generals. They charge him, and he just swats them away like flies.
Yuan Chengdu is the embodiment of the Sui Dynasty's institutional power.
Yeah, he's the final boss.
He is heavily armored, physically imposing, highly trained, and carrying a weapon that requires immense state resources simply to forge, let alone wield in combat. He is the established system made flesh.
So he's swatting away highly trained generals. Then the rebels decide to send out their ultimate champion.
Beat Yuanba.
Yeah, from the rebel lines, out walks Li Yuanba. He is the fourth son of the Tang family, and he does not look like a warrior.
No, he really doesn't.
He looks like a sick, dangerously frail teenager. He looks like a stiff breeze would knock him over. But in his hands, he is casually carrying two hammers.
The drum-beating giant hammers.
Each one weighs 400 pounds.
A combined weight of 800 pounds of solid metal.
800 pounds. He is just strolling out onto the battlefield looking terribly ill, holding the equivalent of a grand piano in his hands.
It's a surreal image.
Yuan Chengdu, this 12-foot giant who has been slaughtering seasoned warriors all day, looks at this kid and clearly assumes it is some kind of psychological trick.
Well, the visual contrast is entirely deliberate in the narrative. It is the established, imposing order facing off against the unassuming, chaotic disruptor.
Yuan Chengdu goes for the immediate kill. He heaves his 400-pound Phoenix Wing weapon and swings it down at this skinny kid with mountain-splitting force.
A massive strike.
This is a strike that has physically crushed hundreds of armored men before him. And Li Yuanba doesn't dodge.
No.
He doesn't use a clever martial arts redirection technique like Luo Cheng did earlier. He just lazily lifts one of his hammers to block it.
The kinetic energy displacement of that collision is difficult to even conceptualize.
It is described like a nuclear bomb going off in a wrestling ring. The impact of a 400-pound trident striking an 800-pound hammer at full force creates a sound wave so massive that it instantly deafens the soldiers standing miles away.
Acoustic trauma on a massive scale.
Yes. The shockwave is so severe that it literally stops the hearts of the war horses underneath the surrounding generals. They just drop dead from the sound.
But the physical trauma is really secondary to the psychological displacement here.
Exactly. Because Yuan Chengdu's arm, an arm that has never met an equal force in its entire existence, goes completely numb.
The shock just travels right up his bones.
His 400-pound weapon nearly flies out of his hands. He looks down at this sick, skinny teenager who just blocked his ultimate career-defining strike like he was, swatting a mosquito.
It destroyed them mentally.
In a fraction of a second, Yuan Chengdu's confidence is permanently shattered. He realizes he is outmatched by a physical impossibility. He turns, severely injured from the recoil alone, and he flees.
It is the absolute breakdown of the established paradigm.
Yeah, nothing he knows works anymore.
Tactical skill, complex formations, massive state-funded weapons, grand hierarchical systems, all of it can only survive until it meets absolute, overwhelming brute force.
Brute force wins.
Li Wamba did not just break Yuan Chengdu's arm, he broke the psychological invincibility of the entire Sui dynasty. He proved that the math of their empire simply no longer functioned.
Man, what a story. Let's look back at the tab we've run up tonight. We started with a terrifying, highly complex military system, the Long Snake Array.
Right.
And we saw how a sprawling, interdependent system could be surgically dismantled by someone who cross-trained,
Yeah.
someone who ignored the armor and just methodically shattered the communication joints.
And then we examined the fatal flaw of leadership isolation.
The boat trip.
Yes. How a CEO-level luxury death trip, driven entirely by arrogance and denial, accomplished what no tactical genius could ever do. It handed a fractured opposition the stationary target they needed to finally unify.
And finally, we watched the ultimate institutional defender, a 12-foot giant with a 400-pound weapon, get completely humiliated by a skinny kid with 800 pounds of blunt force.
A clash of absolute extremes.
We learned that sometimes raw, unadulterated power just shatters the meticulous playbook of war. It stops being about strategy, and it just becomes a terrifying equation of who hits harder.
The illusion of control is very seductive to large empires, but the reality of power is often brutally simple.
Which leaves me with one final question for you to mull over as you finish that drink.
Let's hear it.
Look at any massive conflict, whether we are talking about ancient warfare, modern corporate battles, or just navigating your own industry. Does a rigid, established powerhouse ever really stand a chance against a highly adaptable, rule-breaking newcomer?
It's a tough position to be in.
Or is the outcome always inevitable the exact moment the big guy stops adapting and decides to just take a luxury cruise down the river?
That is the fundamental question every empire eventually has to answer. And historically, they usually ask it far too late.
They usually do. Thanks for pulling up a stool and dropping by for this deep dive. Have a good night, and watch out for the guys with the hammers.